The streets of Dublin were unusually quiet that Tuesday evening. A faint drizzle blurred the yellow glow of the streetlights, scattering reflections across the slick pavement. Dr. Sarah Malik, exhausted after a 12-hour shift at Riverbend General Hospital, drove steadily through the silence, her car heater humming softly. Her eyelids felt heavy, but the thought of home, her husband, her children asleep in their beds, kept her alert. She turned the dial of the radio down low, letting the soft music ease her into the night. Then, beep! The blast of a horn jolted her spine. She glanced into the rearview mirror. A car had appeared out of nowhere, headlights blazing directly into her eyes. The driver leaned on the horn again, long and hostile, shattering the calm. Sarah swallowed hard, steadying her hands on the wheel. Maybe he just wants to pass, she thought, signaling left. But when she changed lanes, the car followed. Her chest tightened. She slowed slightly. He slowed. She sped up. He sped up. Her mouth went dry. This isn't random. Without warning, the car surged forward, swerving into her lane and cutting her off so close she slammed the brakes. The tires screeched, her seatbelt digging into her chest. The other car slowed deliberately, boxing her in. His window rolled down. From the darkness came a guttural voice, words she would never forget. Go back to your country. You don't belong here. Her blood turned cold. This wasn't road rage. This was personal. She turned sharply down a side street, heart pounding. But as the road narrowed, she realized with horror, it was a cul-de-sac. Dead end. The man braked hard, stopping sideways to block her escape. His door flung open, and he stepped out. His shadow stretched across her windshield as he approached, fists clenched, face twisted with rage. Sarah's breath came in short, panicked bursts. She locked the doors, her fingers trembling as she grabbed her phone. She pressed record, whispering to herself, "Stay inside, don't open the door." Bang! He slammed his palm against her window. She jumped, biting back a scream. He leaned close, his spit hitting the glass as he shouted slurs, vile words she prayed her children would never hear. Cat! Parasite! Go back, you don't belong here. Her whole body trembled. She dialed the police emergency line with shaking hands, but didn't dare roll the window down. The man circled her car like a predator, gesturing wildly, making sharp cutting motions across his throat. Every sound seemed louder. The rain dripping, the thud of his shoes on wet pavement, the ragged rhythm of her own breathing. And then instinct took over. She hit the accelerator, jerking the wheel, scraping past his bumper. He cursed, sprinting back to his car. Her heart pounded violently as she sped onto the main road, headlights swerving behind her. For nearly 20 minutes he pursued her, engine roaring, horn blaring, always in her mirror. Finally, she spotted salvation. A petrol station up ahead, bright lights, people milling around. She swerved into the lot, pulling up near the entrance. The man slowed at the driveway, glared one last time, then vanished into the night. Sarah sat frozen, chest heaving, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. She could barely form words when the police arrived. She handed over the video, gave them the plate number. The officer nodded, professional, reassuring. "We'll look into it, Dr. Malik." "Don't worry. We'll track him down." But she didn't feel reassured. For 3 nights afterward, she barely slept. Every time headlights appeared behind her car, her stomach twisted with fear. Every sound at night made her flinch. She replayed the video on her phone, listening to his voice again and again. On the 4th day, her phone rang. A police officer's voice was on the line, heavy and careful. Dr. Malik, about that car registration number you gave us. Her pulse quickened. Yes? Did you find him? A pause, then the words that shattered what little sense of safety she had left. The plate was fake. Her knees buckled. She sank into a chair, phone pressed to her ear, whispering, "So, he's still out there?" "Yes," the officer admitted quietly. "And for now, we have no way of tracing him." The silence on the line was unbearable. Sarah clutched her phone tighter, staring at the darkened window of her small living room. Somewhere in that darkness, the man who hunted her still walked free. It had been a week since the nightmarish chase. A week since Garda told her the words that echoed every time she closed her eyes. The plate was fake. Dr. Sarah Malik tried to bury herself in work at Riverbend General Hospital. She smiled at patients, consulted with colleagues, and kept her voice steady. But under the surface, her nerves were shredded. Every time she walked through the hospital parking lot, her pulse quickened. Every time headlights appeared in her rearview mirror, her hands gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. She wasn't living. She was bracing. That Friday night, she finally made it home after a grueling double shift. Her body ached, her mind foggy, but she forced herself to cook dinner. Her children, 8-year-old Hannah and 10-year-old Ayan, chattered at the kitchen table, their laughter like fragile light in the heaviness of the week. Her husband, Imran, reached for her hand as she set the plates down. "Just one quiet night," he whispered. "That's all we need." And for a brief, precious hour, it almost felt normal. They ate, they laughed, they tucked the children into bed with bedtime stories. But normal didn't last. It was close to midnight when Sarah finally slipped into her bedroom. Imran was already lying down, flipping through a book. She let out a long sigh, pressing her palms over her face. "Maybe tomorrow will be better," she murmured. Then, crash! The sound ripped through the night. Glass exploded inward, showering the carpet with sharp shards. Sarah screamed, jerking back as a heavy stone rolled to a stop near the dresser. For a split second, silence. Then the children's cries pierced the house. "Mama! Mama!" Hannah shrieked from the other room. Sarah's heart hammered as she bolted down the hallway. She flung open their bedroom door, finding both children huddled together, faces wet with tears, their little hands covering their ears. "It's okay. It's okay," she whispered, though her own voice trembled. She pulled them into her arms, feeling their bodies shake. "I'm here." Back in the master bedroom, Imran had rushed to the shattered window, shards crunching under his feet. His eyes widened. "Sarah, look!" Outside, under the street lamp, stood 4 figures. Teenagers, hoods pulled low, faces half-covered. They loitered casually, like predators who knew their prey couldn't fight back. One of them cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Go back to your country!" Another laughed and kicked at the pavement, tossing a mocking salute. Then, as calmly as they had come, the group turned and walked down the street, disappearing into the darkness. Imran's fists clenched. "Cowards!" His voice shook with rage. Sarah held her children tighter, but inside her something cracked wide open. The fear she had been burying for days now roared to life. Her hands trembled so badly she could barely hold her phone as she called the police again. When the officers arrived, the children were still crying, clinging to Sarah's clothes. Flashlights swept over broken glass, over the stone lying in the carpet fibers like a threat that had made itself comfortable in their home. Sarah's voice quivered as she explained everything. The chase, the slurs, now this. The police took notes, asked questions, nodded grimly. But when Sarah pressed them, "Will you catch them? Can you protect us?" the answer was the same hollow one she had heard before. "We'll do our best, Dr. Malik, but no guarantees, no guarantees." As the squad car pulled away, the family was left alone in their once safe home, now fractured by fear. Imran nailed a board over the window, his jaw tight with unspoken anger. The children refused to sleep in their room, instead crawling into their parents' bed. That night, Sarah lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every sound made her flinch. The wind rattling the fence, a distant car door slamming, the creak of the house settling. She could still hear their voices outside. "Go back to your country." Her thoughts spiraled. What if they come back? What if next time it's not just a stone? What if they target my children directly? Tears welled in her eyes, silent and hot. She buried her face in the pillow so the kids wouldn't hear. For the first time since moving to Dublin, the city she once thought was safe and welcoming, Sarah whispered the words she had been fighting against for weeks. Maybe it's time to leave. The shattered glass never really left her mind. Even after Imran had the window replaced, Sarah could still hear it. The violent crack of the stone, the children's screams, the hiss of cruel voices floating in the night. Life went on, but not the same. The children no longer played outside in the evenings. Ayan, once bold and adventurous, now hesitated even to walk to school without clutching his mother's hand. Hannah had started wetting the bed, whispering at night, "Mama, will the bad men come back?" Every ordinary noise became suspicious. The hum of a car slowing down, footsteps echoing in the stairwell, laughter from strangers outside. What used to be harmless now made Sarah's chest tighten. At the hospital, she wore her white coat like armor. Her patients still saw her steady hands, her calm instructions, her warm smile. But inside, she was unraveling. She caught herself scanning the parking lot before every shift, memorizing license plates, studying faces of men who looked too long in her direction. Then came the whispers in the staff lounge. Another immigrant nurse had been shoved on the bus. A Filipino consultant was spat on outside a pub. A Nigerian paramedic had a patient tell him flatly, "I don't want your kind touching me." Each story piled on like bricks on her chest. She thought of the far-right slogans she'd seen scrawled on walls. She thought of her own smashed window, and the conclusion pressed down harder each day. It won't stop. Not for me. Not for my children. One evening, as rain streaked down the hospital windows, Sarah sat in the empty cafeteria, her untouched coffee cooling in front of her. Imran joined her, his shirt still damp from the walk-in. "You can't keep going like this," he said gently. "Every night I see you lying awake. You barely eat. The kids—" He trailed off, his eyes clouded with worry. Her throat tightened. "I thought Ireland was safe," she whispered. "I thought we could build a life here." But what do I tell Hannah when she asks if men with stones are coming back? What do I tell Ayan when he jumps every time someone honks behind us? Imran reached across the table, clasping her trembling hands. Maybe it's time to think of going home. The word home lingered in the air, both a comfort and a wound. Pakistan meant family, familiarity, and safety, but it also meant leaving behind everything she had fought for: the degrees, the long shifts, the respect she had earned in the hospital halls. She stayed silent for a long time. Then she whispered the words she had dreaded. "I'll resign tomorrow." The next morning, Sarah walked into the HR office of Riverbend General with a typed letter clutched in her hands. Every step felt like betrayal, not to the hospital, but to herself. To the woman who had worked endless nights, who had fought to prove she belonged here, who believed she was part of this society. The HR director looked up with surprise when she slid the letter across the desk. "You're resigning? Dr. Malik? Why?" Sarah inhaled shakily. She wanted to explain it all. The stone through the window, the hooded teenagers, the jeering voices in the cul-de-sac, the sleepless nights of terror. But instead she managed only, "For my children." The director's face softened with pity. "You're giving us a month's notice?" "Yes. My last day will be the 30th. When she walked out of the office, her chest felt hollow. She had made the decision. It was final. That night, Sarah sat with her children after dinner, brushing Hannah's hair as she told them bedtime stories. She lingered longer than usual, memorizing every detail of their faces, the safety of this small family circle. Imran watched her from the doorway, and he knew. This wasn't just a resignation. This was the slow goodbye to a dream. And as Sarah lay awake again, staring into the darkness, she felt it deep in her bones. This country no longer wants me. No matter how many lives I save, I'll always be told to go back. What she didn't know was that destiny wasn't finished with her yet. That within weeks, the same voices of hate would return to her life. But this time, not outside her home. This time lying broken on an operating table, begging for the very life she was preparing to leave behind. The month passed slowly, each day pulling Sarah closer to the end of her time in Ireland. Every patient she treated felt like one more memory she would leave behind. The hospital corridors, once full of hope and ambition, now echoed with finality. She had told her children gently, "Soon, we'll be with Grandma and Grandpa again." They smiled, not fully understanding what their mother was sacrificing. Her resignation was no longer just a piece of paper. It was freedom, safety, an escape. She had made peace with her decision, or so she thought. It was late one Friday evening, just a week before her last shift. The hospital was unusually tense. Ambulances screamed through the night, paramedics rushing in with grim faces. Sarah was finishing paperwork when a nurse burst into the room, breathless. "Dr. Malik, we need you in trauma, now!" Critical head injury. Sarah grabbed her gloves and hurried. The trauma room was already buzzing with chaos. A man lay unconscious on the stretcher, his head wrapped in blood-soaked gauze, his face pale, machines shrieking warnings with every beat. The lead nurse rattled off the details. Male, early 40s, car accident, severe head trauma, pupils unequal, GCS dropping. If we don't operate in the next few minutes, he won't make it. Sarah froze for half a second as her eyes landed on the man's battered face. Even swollen and bloodied, she recognized him instantly. Her heart plummeted. It was him, the same man who had blocked her car in a cul-de-sac, the same man who had banged on her window, spitting slurs she could still hear ringing in her ears. "Go back to your country." The man who had stalked her, terrified her, made her children cry in the middle of the night. Now he lay helpless, his life dangling by a thread, and his fate rested in the very hands he once ridiculed. For a moment, Sarah's body went rigid. She felt the weight of every insult, every night of panic, every tear her children had shed. Her mind whispered temptations. He deserves this. Let him face the consequences of his own hate. But another voice rose inside her, steadier, stronger. "You are a doctor. You swore an oath." His hate cannot define you. Her jaw tightened. Prep for surgery, she ordered, her voice sharp with determination. The team rushed into motion. Sarah scrubbed in, her hands steady despite the storm raging inside her. For hours, she worked under the blazing lights of the operating theater. Every cut of her scalpel, every stitch of her hand, was an act of defiance, not against him, but against hate itself. The clock ticked past midnight. Sweat ran down her brow. The room was silent except for the hum of machines and the murmurs of nurses. The man's brain was swelling dangerously. It was touch and go. More than once, his vitals dipped so low the anesthetist shook his head. But Sarah refused to give up. "No," she whispered to herself. "Not tonight." Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, the last stitch was placed. The bleeding stopped, the swelling reduced, the machines steadied. "He's stable," Sarah said, exhaling for the first time in hours. The room erupted with relief. The man remained unconscious in ICU for a week. Sarah checked on him daily, not out of affection but out of duty. She kept her distance, speaking little, letting the nurses manage his care. Then, on the 7th day, the miracle happened. He opened his eyes. At first, his gaze wandered, dazed, disconnected. Then he saw his family, his wife clutching his hand, his teenage son sobbing with relief. His wife whispered through tears, "You're alive because of the doctors. They said it was a miracle. The surgery, it saved you." Confusion clouded his face. "Which doctor?" The nurse gestured toward the doorway, and there she stood. Dr. Sarah Malik. The woman he had chased down, screamed at, demeaned. The woman whose children cried because of his hatred. The woman he had once told to leave this country. Now she was the reason he was alive. His mouth fell open. Shock painted his face. Then shame washed over him like a flood. His eyes dropped, unable to meet hers. With trembling lips, he whispered, It was you?" Sarah's expression remained calm, professional, but her eyes were cold with the memory of what he had done. "Yes," she said quietly. Tears welled in his eyes. He covered his face with shaking hands. I was wrong. I don't deserve this. After everything I said to you, everything I did." His voice broke. "I told you to go back to your country. And you saved my life." Sarah took a step closer, her voice firm but not unkind. "Hate nearly destroyed you. Compassion saved you. Remember that a week later, on her last day at Riverbend General, Sarah packed her belongings into a small box. As she walked through the familiar corridors for the final time, whispers followed her, not of insult, but of admiration. Nurses, patients, and colleagues watched her go, knowing she had not only saved a man's life, but confronted something far larger. In his hospital bed, the man who once spat slurs now stared out the window, his mind replaying her words. For the first time, he saw himself clearly, not as a man of pride, but as a man of shame. As Sarah boarded the plane with her husband and children, the city lights faded beneath her. Ireland had been a land of both dreams and nightmares. She left not with bitterness, but with a truth she hoped would echo beyond her. Racism is a sickness. It destroys not only its victims, but also those who carry it. But kindness, even when undeserved, has the power to heal what hate can never touch.